Jadi ini this work is a spin-off from a work that has been commissioned by the Coordinating Ministry of Economics. So back in April or May this year, we were asked to estimate the impact of a new CPO export levy on the global prices. And like some of the audience here are real expert in CPO, I know Bapak dari Asosiasi Pengusaha. Jadi mohon masukannya. This is really an initial, very preliminary study. I'm not really an expert on CPO myself, but all we did was basically estimating analytically what could be the impact of Indonesia's new export CPO levy. Next. So this is like some of the brief histories of the government's initiations to impose a new CPO export levy. So back in April 2015, the government mandated an increase in the biofuel blending in diesel from 10 to 15%. And of course, the government will need more funding to fund like more expensive biofuel subsidies. So the government imposes a new export levy on CPO to fund an increase in the biofuel subsidies. And the rest of the fund that will be collected through the new export levy will also go to fund replanting, research and development, marketing and promotions of CPO and process CPO, facilities and infrastructure, human resource development in the CPO sector. And in May 2015, presidential regulation on the establishment and the use of CPO plantation fund was issued. Pak Bayu Krishnamurthy, who is the former Minister of Trade, now leads the CPO plantation fund. In July 2015, Finance Ministerial Regulation on the amendment on the exported goods that are imposed, on the amendment of exported goods that are imposed export levy and tariff was issued. On July 16, 2015, the new CPO export levy and tariff was implemented. Next. So this is Indonesia's new CPO export levy and tariff for July 16, 2015. So on the left hand, on the y-axis is the effective tax rate. So there are two lines here. One is the current effective tax rate post July 16, 2015, and the old tax rate. So now with the new export levy tax, even the CPO and process CPO export below 750 will be imposed some levy, and you can see here the comparison between the current and the old effective tax rates. Next. Indonesia's export and production of CPO increased following international price increases starting in 2001, and it's very clear when you see Indonesia's export composition, and also with the following effects, for example, on the land conversions more to palm oil plantations and so on and so forth. Next. And you can also see here that Indonesia is the leading global palm oil producer right now. It actually now exports more of palm oil than Malaysia. And so we actually want to know whether, as dominant global exporters and global producers of palm oil, this CPO export levy and hence the less supply to the global export market will have an impact on the CPO international prices. Indonesia's exported crude palm oil mostly to India and followed by China, Malaysia, Bangladesh, and Singapore. And this is a comparison, sorry, not Malaysia, India, in 2014 is in India, China, Pakistan, Italy, and Netherlands. So these two tables compare 5 biggest importing countries of Indonesia CPO between 2011 and 2014. So actually the research questions is very simple. So basically we want to know what's the impact of the new export levy on the global prices of CPO, especially since Indonesia dominates the export market share with close to 50% of the global market share, export share. And also we want to know whether the net gain will be positive or negative for Indonesia CPO producers. So we use a series of data. Particularly, we use Indonesia's export of vegetable oils instead of CPO because the export of CPO is not available in a monthly basis. But this is a proxy for Indonesia's CPO export volume since the monthly data doesn't exist for this. But the trend in level and change of these two variables, so export in vegetable oils and export in CPO are actually the same. So we can see it in the annex. And then we seasonally adjusted and detrended this data because obviously export of CPO have some seasonality, and we show that it's actually trend stationary, which means that it's stationary. The data is stationary. For those of you who are not really familiar with the term stationary, basically it means that the mean and the deviations of the data is the same in any time. So we show that the data is actually trend stationary. So it's stationary, but there is a trend. So we have to detrend it, and we have to control for the supply of palm oil. So we take the production, but because there's an endogeneity issue, so we have to instrument it with some other exogenous variables. So in this case, we instrumented it with lack and current rainfall, temperature, and events of El Nino and La Nina. And for price, we take the domestic price of CPO, which is just international price of CPO times the exchange rate. And also we show that the data is trend stationary, so we have to detrend it. Similarly with the price of soybean. We also control for China's real GDP. Like most of the GDP data, there is no monthly data, so we interpolate it from monthly China's industrial production index. It's also seasonally adjusted, and we take the monthly growth. So we also we try to control for structural break for different trade regime of CPO in Indonesia, but we show no significance, and we also control for India's real GDP. We decided not to use India's real GDP because we cannot find any monthly indicators in which we can interpolate India's real GDP. And when we use India's monthly industrial production index, it shows no significance, and most probably because India is a service economy, so industrial production index is not a good proxy for India's GDP. Next. As I said earlier, we test the data, we test for the unit roots and trend of the data, and we show that for the prices of CPO and soybean, as well as vegetable oil exports, they are trend stationary at 5% level. We also seasonally adjusted export and China's real GDP. So this is basically, so we use a three-stage least square of the system of structural equations. So basically it's a simultaneous export supply and export demand. On the on the demand equation, we have on the left-hand side, we have the natural law of export, and we control for the natural law of price of CPO, the natural law of natural law of price of soybean, which is a substitute for CPO, and China's real GDP monthly growth. For the supply equation on the left-hand side, we take the reverse of the supply equation. On the left-hand side, we have natural log of price of CPO, and on the right-hand side, we have natural log of export, Indonesia's exports of vegetable oils, and instrument variables for production, which is rainfall and rainfall squared, and temperature squared, and the events of El Nino and La Nina. And at the equilibrium, Indonesia's export demand for CPO will be equal to Indonesia's export supply for CPO, and the endogenous variables here are exports, Indonesia's export for a CPO, which are instrumented with, which is proxy with export of vegetable oil, and price of CPO. So this is the results from the three-stage least square. So you can see here that because we have log and log regression, so this is the coefficients actually shows the elasticity of price and demand. So 7% of maybe next. So a 1% increase in the CPO price will result in 0.7% decrease in the Indonesia's palm oil exports. A 1% decline in the price of soybean results in 0.5% decreases in export of CPO as demand shift to the cheaper substitute. A 1% point decline in China's economic activity results in 3.3% decrease in export demand for Indonesia, and 1% decrease in export supply results in 5.5% rise in the rupiah price of CPO. So you can see here that actually we show here that not only Indonesia's Indonesia supply to the export market will determine the price, but also we show here, for example, that China's real GDP growth will also, and also relative price between soybean and CPO will affect CPO global price. Yeah. So to answer Yusuf's questions, in the short term, after the export levy is imposed, we expect that the world price of CPO may increase since Indonesia is a price maker with a high share of the global CPO market. However, it may lead to a subsequent decline in the demand for CPO. For example, from China, which is one of the 5 biggest importing countries, as imports shift to CPO substitutes such as soybean oil. And also as a result, in the medium run, prices may actually decline because lower demand relative to supply. And other factors might also work against the export levy from increasing global CPO prices, such as China's demand for palm oil may decline because of weaker GDP growth, and so that the initial price increase expected by the government may be actually neutralized. In all, it is clear that the impact of the new export levy on Indonesian CPO producer will be positive or negative. So there's Indonesia's CPO producers' profits will be affected by many factors other than our supply to the global market. For example, it will also be affected by China's growth. Next, so this is what we want to do, and we will try to do for our paper. We want to separate between the short run and the long run effect using maybe error correction model, and also run some scenarios on the short run effect on CPO export and prices and long run effect on CPO export and prices. And we also really want to have some policy recommendations by estimating, for example, what is the impact of export tax revenues and the off-balance sheet CPO plantation fund collection. So just some update. Well, maybe this is not so much irrelevant, but just before I present, before I came here, I actually checked the CPO price. So this is taken from Malaysia's MPOC, I think, and it was I was quite surprised that for the past 3 days the CPO price has plummeted quite significantly. I don't know, maybe I don't know why. But I mean, of course, there are many factors that determine this global CPO market. That is always like an interest. Whether our expectations that when we decrease our supply to the global market export share, the global price will go up. But apparently, it has been going down since the CPO export levy is implemented. So some other updates. About a week ago, Pak Bayu, who is leading the CPO Plantation Fund, announced that last month the processed palm oil, the share of the processed palm oil out of total palm oil that is exported has been increasing significantly. So from the previous 25% to about 70%. So I have yet to check the data. That's what. Pak Bayu claimed that the share of the processed palm oil after the levy was imposed has significantly increased. So I guess that's all. It's I don't have my story behind it, but just some analytical work. But I think it's very exciting. It's very exciting because Indonesia's growth, as we all know, has been very much supported by the palm oil export. So any policies on palm oil will be very important and will be worth to monitor. Thank you.